This is the Khmer Times News. My name is Paolo Bonini, and these are your headlines. A gruesome murder leaves a woman horribly mutilated. More children die on the streets of Phnom Penh, and yet again the driver flees the scene. And roads. There is to be lots of new roads being built. But firstly, as our headline story. But before we start, allow me to explain that this is being recorded early as I am in hospital having an operation. So if a UFO lands on Angkor Wat and it's not mentioned here, that is why. But now to our lead story, and it's all about the gruesome murder of a Cambodian woman in Thailand. And the details of this crime very much echo one of Jack the Ripper's victims, because the woman was so very horribly mutilated. The victim was a 30-year-old Cambodian woman identified as Mab. It was said by a neighbor the next day she had heard arguing in the adjacent room, but she thought very little of it. What she did not know was the crime being committed right next door was to horrify an entire community. It was, in fact, the victim's sister that entered their lodging room the next day, and she discovered the carnage that the killer had left behind. She looked on in utter terror to see the room soaked in blood, not only covering the floor, but splattered over both the walls and the ceiling. The police were called, and what they found shocked even the most seasoned officers, as the victim's face had been severely mutilated by numerous frenzied stab wounds. Her face and neck had been ripped apart by what could only have been a large knife. The theory of the crime of passion was compounded further when it was discovered a large sum of money and jewelry had remained untouched. The very nature of these injuries suggests the perpetrator harbored an intense hatred towards his victim and aimed not only to kill her, but to destroy her. The Cambodian embassy has been informed, and the Thai police are now hunting that evil killer. On this week's Crime Desk, children die in quarries, children die on the roads, but men die in casinos. I honestly don't know how to approach these two stories, as they sadden and anger me in equal degrees. So I'm going to let a photo do the talking for me. Have a look at this picture, and what you will see is what true heartache really looks like. You may think you're having a bad day, but this woman's posture tells it all. For under those blankets are two dead children, and one of them is her son. Her anguish is only compounded by the fact her son died unnecessarily, for he drowned at a sand dredging site in Doum Khor village. That day, 4 boys had been playing in the sand quarry, where a huge hole had filled with water. The dangerous quarry and the water-filled site were not cordoned off, and the 2 boys fell into the water, and both of them drowned. One was 9 years old, and the other was just 6. Now, that story is truly tragic. Due to a lack of safety at the quarry, kids died. But this next story is so much worse, and it also ends with 2 dead children. I can't convey to you how much this story has upset me. I am literally seething with anger. So here we go. An 11-year-old girl and a 9-year-old girl were driving home on their motto one evening this week. Their names were Julie. She was the one that was 11, and her little sister, So Peng, who was just 9 years old. They were hit by a speeding car and were left to die on the streets of the capital. God knows I am fed up with reading these stories, as yet again children's blood ran freely on the tarmac of the capital. They were hit by a speeding car, and instead of the driver stopping to try and save a child's life, 9. She was just 9. But instead of stopping and doing what the only humane thing is, which is to help the wounded, the driver looked upon these two children bleeding and injured, and he decided to look after himself. He looked upon them dying, and he did nothing. He just drove away. As this story is being recorded, nobody as yet has been arrested. Do you want me to follow up on that last story? Do you? You know, the one about the small children dying on the streets. Well, how about this? A well-known actress here in Cambodia, Miss Duc, was stopped in the streets of the capital in her rather nice oversized car, and she was found to be drunk. She was fined $500, and this did not seem to faze her very much, as an apology was not forthcoming. In fact, on social media, she said, and I quote her, "The problem is over." Okay, so you pay a fine, and then there is no issue driving 2 tons of metal whilst drunk. If that's not enough for you, well, how about this? And please remember, both stories are from the same week. Another actor and singer fled from a police checkpoint in the early hours of the morning. Instead of stopping, Mr. Sakun swerved away from the police and he sped off down the road. He crashed into numerous other vehicles, causing havoc on the roads, as his Land Cruiser, which is about the size of a battle tank, demolished numerous other vehicles. And now you can place your guess. Did the police in their report indicate that this guy, just like the other woman, was drunk? Well, yes, they did. Now let's remember when it was those 2 little girls were murdered by a hit-and-run driver. Yep, that's right, it was in the evening. And why did the murderer of these little girls let them die on the tarmac that night? Why did he flee? Well, is it not probable he, like these 2 irresponsible celebrities, was also drunk? I remind you of what Miss Douche said. The drunk singer who got the $500 fine, she said the problem is over. Yeah, you're right, ma'am. It is over when a child breathes their last breath, as they die in a pool of their own blood after being hit by a driver who was potentially drunk. The driver who disappears into the night, caring only for themselves, not their fellow citizens, even if those fellow citizens are only small children. Now let me calm down some and get on to the more mundane of murder and casinos. This time there is an added irony to be discovered in the casino's name. Authorities have arrested 5 foreign suspects in connection with the murder of a man who was found dead in a car. The case is rather bizarre and involves more than the average amount of skullduggery. And it all unfolded after the Bavette police station received a call at 7 a.m. one morning. The call from the casino company, called the Lucky Casino. The irony of that name will soon become apparent. The man on the phone from the casino told the police of how a man associated with Lucky Casino had died in the back of one of their staff cars. According to the caller, he was ill and was being transported to a local hospital. The police, though, became more than a little suspicious and went to the scene with forensic experts. It was said by the casino staff that the man had died in his bed, when in fact he had very clear signs of being beaten to death. It was then the police arrested 3 Burmese men who were security managers at the Lucky Casino, as well as 2 Chinese managers. After questioning, one of the Burmese men stated that a Chinese manager had asked him to lie about the man's death, for which he would receive $50,000. Now, as to how they ever thought a man who had been beaten to death could look like anything like a man who had died peacefully in his bed, is maybe the biggest mystery of this story. It seems to be a very clear case of murder at a casino called Lucky, when one man's luck actually ran out, for he played his final hand, and now he lays in the graveyard. Now, you may know I hunt ancient temples, and then I share my videos hoping to promote not so much the temples themselves, but to get people to put down their glasses of beer and go into the glorious Cambodian countryside and soak in its many wonders. And believe me, it's really nice out there. Only yesterday I was up a mountain, and my goodness, it was beautiful. The view was fascinating, and I returned home my heart full of joy. Well, now getting out and about in the countryside will be a whole load easier, as the ministry is aiming to upgrade a massive 1,500 kilometres of rural roads. And if that is not enough, another whopping 7,700 kilometres of new roads are slated for completion by 2028. The budget is rather impressive, as over $250 million is to be spent. In fact, 2,068 million this year alone, and in 5 years, that is to jump to $500 million. And why this is so very important? Well, roads are the veins and the arteries of a nation, and it is those rural roads that allow crops and goods to be brought to the international market in an efficient and a timely manner. And if the kingdom is to remain the leading country for economic growth within Southeast Asia, it desperately needs these roads to keep up with the increasing demand. Mind you, of all these roads, I must confess, my only hope is they do the road outside my house. It's time to have a look ahead and see what the weather has in store for us next week.
So here we are, the final leaf in the book, which is always the weather, as you can see. It's a little bit earlier. As I say, I've got to go in for an operation, and I've had it before. It's so painful, I can't tell you. But what can you do? You know, it has to be done. Let me have a look at the chart here. And oh my goodness, I'm back on the screen. Right, no, go back. Do you know what? Every week I mess this up. You would have thought I'd learned how to get it up by now, wouldn't you? Right, and what do we see? Well, we can see a standard. We've got more thunder, rain, lightning, and more rain itself. And my goodness, we need it. I've been here 17 years. This is the driest year that I remember. So this rain is most welcome. Your high temperatures, well, still up in the 30s and could reach 34.
This has been the Khmer Times News. Please do subscribe and comment and stay up to date with all the breaking news by following us on both Facebook and Telegram. This has been Paolo Bonini, and that was the week that was. I'll see you next weekend for your weekly Roundup.